Good evening, everybody. Ooh, terrible. I don't think...
Getting a lot of backlash, Alex.
Try it again? Okay, I think it's maybe working now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 7th regular meeting of the... No, it's not working. It's not on. Hello? Okay.
I think you have to speak right into the microphone.
I usually don't have to get this close, but is that better? Yeah. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 7th, 2024 meeting of the Oyster River Cooperative School Board. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. I do have one addition under the superintendent's report. I'd like to add the approval of the director of facilities. And with that change, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Tom? Can I have a second? Heather? All in favor? And that's 7 in favor, and the student rep is in favor. Any members of the public who wish to speak tonight? Seeing none? Okay. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the January 17th regular meeting minutes? Tom?
So moved.
Can I have a second? Gianna? Any changes, corrections? I have one very small one on page 4 under school board committee updates under my comment. It should say Denise Day shared that she attends the Dover Mental Health Alliance monthly meetings. So just the addition of that word. Are there any other corrections? Okay, then all in favor? And we have 7 in favor and the student rep in favor. Can I have a motion to approve the non-public meeting minutes for January 17th? Heather? Can I have a second? Gianna? Any correction to those? Seeing none, all in favor? 7 in favor. Announcements, accommodations, and comments from the district.
Good evening. David Goldsmith from Moheramet. I have 4 announcements. The first one, sugaring has begun at Moheramet. As an adult, it's a little frightening to know that sugaring has started because sugaring used to start at town meeting day. And now here we are a full month before town meeting. And not only are we tapping our trees, but I've spoken to a lot of community members who have been tapping their trees as well, and the sap is flowing. So it's a real sign of the changing environment around us. That is something we talk to our students about, but we also celebrate the incredible tradition of Moheramet sugaring. So I was able to go out with a kindergarten classroom today. We've had a number of classes go out since yesterday. The sap is flowing, the buckets are filling, and we're very excited to continue with that wonderful Moheramet tradition. I need to really thank, of course, Jim Davis, Assistant Fire Chief in Madbury, who is our head sugarer, evaporator, boiler, and all-around educator for maple sugaring. We also have a large number of parent and community volunteers this year who are helping to not only tap with our students, but then also learn how to boil and run our evaporator so that this Moheramet tradition can last as long as nature will allow it. So we're really excited about that. My second announcement is that next week we have a 3rd grade chorus concert taking place right here in this concert hall. It's Thursday the 15th at 6:30. It's a world music focus. We're really excited to hear the 3rd graders. This will be their first time performing for an audience. Chorus begins in 3rd grade, so it's a great experience for them. We are also celebrating reading at Moheramet. We have a celebration of reading week starting next week, which has a number of different activities, an all-school read and other activities like that. And both in conjunction in our school and with Mastway, we have an author coming to speak to our students, Matt Tavares, who's a very well-known author and illustrator of both novels and picture books, coming to our school to meet with our students next week. Those are the 3 announcements about February. When we come back from break, right around the time of the next first of the month school board meeting, our students in 3rd and 4th grade will be taking one of the state assessment tests. Usually all of the New Hampshire SAS tests are given in the May to June timeframe. That window is set up by the state. This year, the state of New Hampshire is changing the writing assessments for students, and they need to hand score the essays that the students write. And in order to have enough time to hand score them, they made the testing window for the writing portion of the test the beginning of March. So we'll be having our 3rd and 4th graders do just that piece of it at the beginning of March, and then we'll send out more information to our families about the reading and the math portions of that state assessment, which will happen in the late May timeframe per usual. This will be the only year that happens from the state, is what they've told us, and that next year we should expect that all of the testing will happen within the regular window in May to June. Those are my announcements. Any questions? Denise?
Is there going to be a pancake breakfast?
Absolutely. Our pancake breakfast is going to happen, I think it's April 13th. It's a Saturday. It's right around that date. It's happening then where this year, the way different holidays like Eid and Passover are lining up, and the way our sugaring season is lining up, our pancake breakfast will be in April. That way, everybody in our community will be able to take part in that food celebration. Dr. Smith? It could maybe be that. Maybe I should have said, I can't remember exactly what day it is, Denise, but it's sometime in April. Any other questions? It's either 6 or 13, says Dr. Smith. Anything else? Thank you all very much.
Hi. No power button. Good evening, Misty Lowe from Mastway School. I have 8 announcements. February is a very busy month, and it goes very quickly with our winter break coming up. So we're squeezing in a lot of exciting things for our students in that amount of time. This week alone, we had a fun activity after school for our kindergartners called Robotics and Rice Krispies. And we were fortunate to be supported by students from Oyster River High School from the computer science. It's the computer science Honor Society students from the high school that came to Mastway, worked with our families in the evening. Kids got to be the teachers and teach their parents how to code and debug and things like that, and it was a very fun activity. Kudos to Susan Leifer. She's just a terrific technology integrator that often goes above and beyond to offer a variety of wonderful activities to our students and their families. Today was Global School Play Day. There was a lot of fun happening at Mastway School today. Today was a great day to see all the SEL skills that we teach our children come to life. It is a very interesting opportunity to see problem solving and conflict resolution, and a lot of those skills we're teaching our children as they're playing through a variety of creative games and things of that nature. So Mastway's had a long-standing celebration of Global School Play Day, and that was today, and it was a lot of fun. Kindergarten registration has begun. The front office is very busy. It's wonderful to meet new families as well as meet siblings of families that we're very familiar with. So I believe we're already up to 16 registrations for kindergarten, and that's super exciting, a fun energy happening. Tomorrow evening is the Mastway Family Literacy Night at 5:30, and the Mastway, we'll be holding that in the gym and the cafeteria. Our literacy specialist, Allison Neri, has head up that with our literacy committee, and there'll be a variety of activities for the children and their families tomorrow night. As Principal Goldsmith mentioned, we have a visiting author coming. I know our 2 library media specialists work together for this wonderful activity, and that will be happening on February 16th for Mastway. It's a full day of read aloud, and children who chose to buy books can get their books signed. So that's a special event. We too have a concert coming up, but ours is for 2nd grade. It's called Ode to Joy, and the 2nd graders will be using this space on February 20th to do a fun performance. This has been a co-teaching opportunity that our PE teacher, Kathy Baker, and our music teacher, Chris Milner, they have combined, collaborated. It'll be a fun evening of music and movement with a bunch of 2nd graders, so that will be a lot of fun if you're able to come out. That starts at 6 p.m. with 2 of our 2nd grade classrooms, a small transition time, and then at 7 p.m. our other 2 2nd grade classrooms will be performing right here. Let's see. I just want to remind our families our progress report timeline is later this year than it's been in the past. So progress reports will be coming home that Friday with their children. They'll receive it both electronically and paper, and we ask that families will review those over winter break and then return the signed progress reports when they return in March. And like I said, February is busy and our winter break will come quickly, and there is no school on Monday the 26th of February through Friday, March 1st. And lastly, as Mr. Goldsmith already mentioned as well, we will return and have that writing state assessment for our 3rd and 4th graders. The very week we return, we'll be doing that at Mastway that Wednesday and Thursday. I don't have that in front of me. I think it's the 6th and 7th for Mastway. A lot happening. Matt, I wrote it all down if you have any questions. Are you good? I love that. Any more questions for me? All right, have a great night.
Good evening. Bill Sullivan, middle school. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the board and Dr. Morse and the community for the confidence and support you have in me becoming the, I guess, official principal of the middle school. I wasn't here last week to accept that 2 weeks ago, but I'm here now, and I just want to say thank you. And I look forward to doing some of the great stuff we've been working on now, continuing that as we move into the future. So it's very exciting. Thank you. Going on, we've got a ton going on as well. Our basketball season is ending. It's the longest season we have. It feels like, I mean, we started probably the end of October. No, I should say in the beginning of October, and it's just ending. Tomorrow's our last game, so the kids are excited to be a part of that. And before you know it, we'll be outside, and our spring sports will be starting soon. We had a very successful 7th, 8th grade dance, our snowball, on January 26th. It was awesome. 7th and 8th graders, his 2nd dance this year. They had a great time. Excited to see them out and being able to hang out with one another and enjoy the time. We have an upcoming, this Friday, we have a 5th and 6th grade social for the 5th and 6th graders. There'll be fun and games in the gym. We'll have dancing with a DJ in the Learning Commons, and we'll have a movie in here so kids can come and hang out and have a lot of fun things to do. That's from 5:30 to 7. Our progress reports, they went out. 2nd quarter progress reports went out last week, so our family should have seen them. Things have been going great. It's hard to believe we're already in the 2nd half of the year. Time is flying, so already into the 3rd quarter. We have our NAEP test coming up. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Next Friday, we have 50 selected 8th graders that will be taking that national assessment, the nation's report card. And tomorrow night, we have a big night. It's part of our 8th to 9th grade transitions. That has started for our 8th graders. We've had counselors here a few times over the last week or so talking about course selection, talking about the different grading that they may see, getting them ready for that transition when they become freshmen next year. Tomorrow night is a big night with parents at the high school. They'll be meeting there at 6 o'clock talking to, I would imagine, Ms. Noe and counselors. So that's a big night for our parents. And finally, we have Kindness Week coming up. That'll be February 19th through the 23rd. We've got a lot of different activities. We'll have different schedules that week. We've got some guest speakers coming in and a lot of great things planned for staff and students. That's about it. Any questions? Tom?
Have you started the survey, the competency survey? Is that?
Our survey we've started and is pretty much complete. We've got all our kids took it, our staff took it. It's been great.
Great.
Yep,
Thanks.
definitely. Yes.
So I know we were trying to be sustainable and not sending home the paper report cards, but I'm a fan, not gonna lie.
Good, okay, well, that's good feedback. So that's a good thing. So you did get one, correct? Okay, well, we'll keep that in the feedback loop and make sure we're doing what you want. Thank you.
Good evening, Rebecca Noe, principal at the high school. Matt and Karen, are you ready? Okay, not a lot of dates, but a lot of information. So first this week was National Counselor and School Psychologist Week. And so I just wanted to send a huge thank you to our counselors and our school psychologists. And that includes our LADAC, Britta Bartlett. And so one of the things our counselors have worked a lot on this year is getting into advisories more. They've created new programming, and they actually spent the entire day yesterday at the middle school. So they're already working on transitions and looking at requests and talking to kids about grading and what the differences are. And so I just wanted to really acknowledge all of the time, effort, and hard work that they have put in with our upcoming 9th graders, but all of our current freshmen also. So just a huge thank you to our counselors. I am extremely happy to announce we actually have 9 teachers nominated for Teacher of the Year. And so I'm going to name them off and what their discipline is. So Gab Anderson, Social Studies. Jacqueline Jensen, Social Studies. Karen Van Dyke, Social Studies. Peter Harwood, Math. Erica Cook, Math. Jericho Olberg, Chorus. Andrea Von Oyen, Strings. Sarah Cathy, Science. And Corey Blaze, English. Everyone very deserving, so just a congratulations for being nominated.
Becca, can you talk to us about the nomination process, because we've never had that many
Yes.
people before?
So anyone can nominate a teacher, but after that, the teacher chooses if they want to keep going in the process. So I know there are different steps. So for example, Andrea was nominated last year and made it to the, actually almost to the finalist part. So they have to write essays, they have to get recommendations, and then they're invited to, I don't want to call it a party, but like an organized gathering, and they get to meet with the governor and usually the governor's wife. From there, they select semifinalists, and from there, they select finalists. So, but they choose to be in that process, and so some teachers choose not to follow because it is a lot of work on their part to keep going in the process, but all of them are extremely happy and feel really good about being nominated. So they're not done deciding yet who is and who isn't, but that's an individual decision that they're making. Okay, any other questions about that? Okay, so congratulations to them again. I wanted to give you an update on some work that we're actually doing in the high school. Teachers over the past year and a half have come to me a couple different times, and one of the things that they wanted to talk about was late work and reassessment. And the teachers were actually looking to create more guidelines that the school would follow. And so Nancy Michaud, who is our Assistant Special Ed Director, is leading that. And the teachers involved are Kim Casimus, Alex Eustace, Jen Weeks, Maggie Trier, Nate Oxnard, Jen Wainwright, Chris Kearney, and Jackie Casey. So very well represented with math, science, counseling, special ed, English. And so that's work teachers are doing. So I'm actually looking forward to their update on our next teacher workshop day, just to see where they are with that work. But one of the things that we do, we have committees that work on some of these big ideas. They come back to the faculty, get faculty feedback, and then they go and continue their work, and then they'll come back to the faculty. So while it's a smaller committee, depending on which teachers and what they want to be involved in, it is a good way to keep work going in the high school. So I just wanted to start giving you updates on some of those things that teachers are involved in that aren't necessarily in the workday, but they can be passionate about also. Next page. So last year, we had a student who, through the sociology class with Gab Anderson, actually started a leadership advisory council with me, and this was her idea from sociology. And what that is, once or twice a quarter, we now put it in adaptive scheduler. Any student in the building can actually sign up to come and sit with me and or one of the other administrators. And what we basically do is just listen. What are the issues that students are seeing? What are the good things they see happening in the school? What are some things they think we need to work on? So this last meeting we just had had last Thursday or Friday. And one of the issues, they talked about midterms, and actually the kids that came, what they liked about the midterm schedule, what they didn't. They loved the flex time. They liked the review time. And then one of the things that is coming out of that that's actually different for this year, they wanted to start kind of a center for tutoring. And so Lisa Harling is taking the charge with these students. And I didn't realize we used to have that pre-COVID. It stopped during COVID. And so these students weren't here during COVID in the high school. And so they didn't know that either. So this idea was generated, but we actually have some pre-work they can go off of to see if that's how they would like to organize it. But we actually have students leading that with our librarian, Lisa Harling, and they're creating what that'll look like for the library, coming up with an application process, how to schedule things, make sure someone's qualified to do the tutoring. But it's just nice to have students who really want to help that way and are willing to put the work in to then organize that. So I wanted to talk about what they're doing on that committee. And sometimes the same kids come and sometimes it's different kids. So it's just interesting being able to hear their voice and hear what they want in the school and be able to make that happen. I did want to make sure that you knew, I want to announce that one of our Oyster River Portsmouth football players, Colton Brizard, represented not only our schools, but the state of New Hampshire. He was the only player in New Hampshire to play in the All-American High School Bowl game. So I wanted to congratulate him for that. That's a pretty big honor. Bill reminded you about the 8th grade parent night, so 6 o'clock tomorrow night in the high school auditorium. Report cards, if you saw in the newsletter, there was a little mix-up with Power School. There was a glitch, and so the report cards are now out on Power School. The directions were in the last newsletter, but parents can get those as of yesterday, so I wanted to make sure parents were aware of that. And finally, I wanted to thank our music department. They have created a pep band, and they have been at the basketball games, and I have heard so much enthusiasm from the players, from students, from parents. They are amazing. They play all different kinds of music. It was Darth Vader the other night, I think was the first thing they played. So just a huge thank you and congratulations for the extra work they're putting in. It's made a real difference in the games, and everybody is absolutely enjoying those. So, any questions for me? Oh, I did have one more. This one I couldn't write down, sorry. Actually, Saturday, we have the Lunar New Year Community Day, and this is Mrs. Fan. She has created this. It's the second year she's doing it, but it is a community event to kick off the Year of the Dragon celebration, and she actually had a sign-up sheet. She's had over 100 people sign up so far. She's really excited about that, but I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. If you want to come to the high school on Saturday, it is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and it should be a lot of fun. So that was really it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Lots of good things happening in the schools.
Hi, everyone. Rachel Blansett, DIJ Director. I have a few announcements. So in March, we have a few professional development opportunities coming up for teachers and staff. First, we're going to have a bias boot camp workshop. It's going to be from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. On the teacher workshop day, so Friday, March 15th. So I'm really excited about that. I'll be leading that. And then also, I was able to secure GLSEN to come to the district. GLSEN is a national organization that supports an LGBTQ plus education. I found this was an important organization to bring to the district, seeing as last year, our LGBTQ plus 101, like foundational concepts, professional development opportunity was the highest attended by teachers. And I know throughout my work with teachers, I get a lot of questions around LGBTQ plus things, and I just think it will be a really helpful resource for everyone. So it's actually a 4-part training series. So the first module is going to be offered from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. after school on Friday, March 15th. I'm looking for to serve dinner or some sort of food from 5 to 6, and then we'll have the first part of the module. And then the other modules will be offered the next day on Saturday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'm hoping to have some morning snacks, and then they'll have lunch on their own, but we'll have the other 3 parts in the series that day. Registration for this particular program will be on a first-come, first-served basis, seeing as GLSEN costs based on audience numbers, and so we have a max capacity of 50 folks to participate, which is exciting. I've typed up everything and created the registration forms, and that will be sent out tomorrow morning for teachers to look at and sign up if they choose to participate, so that's exciting. As Bill mentioned, Kindness Week is coming up at the middle school, and so I've been working with Bill and Alita to coordinate some grade level assemblies on the power of language. So thinking about you know, intent versus impact, the power of our words, and I think just given the circumstances of different things happening, I think this will be a really helpful presentation for the grades to hear and participate. So that will be on Friday, February 23rd, and it will be throughout the day, starting in the morning. Also, I met with some folks from the DEIJ community group yesterday, and we continued to plan and finalize a format for our spring upcoming event. The name is still TBD, but the theme is going to be focused on belonging and building relationships with the community via storytelling. So our tentative hold date is going to be on Thursday, May 2nd. Sometime in the evening, and we're hoping to begin with a panel of folks with various lived experiences, so whether that's around race or gender or disability, class, and then followed by small table facilitated discussions with intentional question prompts. So folks can, you know, relate over shared experiences or hear diverse experiences that maybe they're not aware of within their own community. And we're also hoping to reach out and partner with community orgs to also get some of that community support as well. And then, quick update, I'm going to be presenting to you all on February 21st. I'm going to be doing another DEIJ workshop presentation for you all. The topic is still TBD, but I will send you information once that's finalized. I'm thinking the focus will probably either focus on LGBTQ plus education or building off and talking about microaggressions. So stay tuned for that. Any questions? Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other updates from the administrators? Okay. Board announcements, accommodations, and comments. Tom?
Is this on? Okay. I'd just like to call people's attention to an article that appeared in the New York Times a couple days ago. It was by researchers who have looked at learning loss, including Thomas Kane from Harvard, who's one of the major researchers in learning loss. And what they did is they created a database in which you can go in and look at learning loss and learning recovery in math from grades 3 through 8. And math is the area where learning loss was considered most acute. So you can look up by school district. And so, of course, I looked up Oyster River. And it's really an extraordinary story that you see in that database, because Oyster River was, it's consistent, Suzanne, with what you've been showing us, but to see it in the New York Times database was really kind of very compelling, because you saw that Oyster River in math in 3 through 8 was operating at a very high level before the pandemic. They saw it at 2.5 grade, 8 years above the national average, a slight dip, and an immediate recovery to the level previous to the pandemic. And then they kind of like put that in the context of other New Hampshire schools, and of the 38, we were 3rd. And I just think, you know, those of us that lived through that time, how excruciating the decisions were and how we knew that we were limiting opportunities for kids and making it difficult for teachers to, because of the decisions we made. And just a tribute to the teachers to the administrators, to the parents, to the kids. I just think it's an extraordinary story. And I hope that, you know, maybe with some communication this can be spread, because this was heroic. This was great.
I agree. I think it's pretty remarkable, and it's nice to see the acknowledgement also in an article in conversation outside of the school board and what we talk about here. And we continue to see that growth to get to the point where we are at pre-pandemic level. So it is pretty remarkable. And it is a testament to the community inside the schools, the teachers, the tutors, interventionists, the special educators, the counselors, everybody. It really does take everybody, administrators, to be able to make such a profound change after the pandemic to get back to the level that we were at pre-pandemic. So I agree.
Thank you. Brian?
I know this went out through School Messenger, but I just wanted to remind everyone that this district lost a great man this weekend on Saturday. Paul Bamford passed away, but he has a long history within the district as a coach, as a parent, as a graduate, as a pretty much all around everything. He fundraised, he did everything. And he touched a lot of people in ways that you may not ever understand. He mentored me 20 years ago at Liberty Mutual when I worked with him, and he's mentored, as I found out, he mentored a lot of people that I know. I had no idea he had even mentored them. He just took everybody, students, adults, everybody under his wing, and just made them better people. And people like Paul don't come around usually more than once in a lifetime. And he's going to be sorely missed. I know I don't know if this was brought up last night at the deliberative session, but I know last year at the deliberative session, he was there and recognized. And he is going to be missed and is going to be basically impossible to replace. But if everyone can keep him in your thoughts and his family, because he has a wonderful family, and he was a wonderful person, and if everyone just keep him in your thoughts, it'd be most appreciated.
Thank you. Other board? Yes, Heather?
So this is a very sharp right turn. I'm going to let Denise do most of the lifting on this one, but I went to the Internet Crimes Against Children thing here, and I was late, swim drop-offs and whatnot, but it was really informative, and I wish I had been able to come to the whole thing. And I was also slightly scared to death when I left, but it was super great information, and that wasn't the messaging, it was just the way I was processing it at the time, but it was really great and really great information. So do we have a plan to publish any of the resources he provided? Or, because I know there was a whole bunch of links and stuff, and
we can put the links up. We're going to be doing, this is in my presentation, but I will give some more information about ICAC and what's to come.
Others? Gianna?
This one's another one that's not overwhelmingly shiny and happy. Misty's presentation today actually kind of brought this to mind, or just actually is reiterating the fact that this is important. One of the bills that I've been tracking is HB 1473. It would make a law that would make it so SEL teaching would be forbidden in New Hampshire. Including prohibiting schools from collecting or using student data pertaining to school climate, including education, confidence, connections, motivation, stress, and or well-being. Considering that SEL is pivotal to the school and is pivotal to our entire ethos, I was actually wondering if you folks would like to have me write a letter saying the school board's viewpoint on this and sending this to the Education Committee. They are having a vote on the bill on February 13th.
I know the governor's already said he's not going to sign it if it comes across his desk, if I remember correctly, so.
Right, but I just think this one just is one of those things I think it needs to be very clear, and it would be great if it actually was voted as inexpedient to legislate out of committee. And this would be very helpful to do, to make it so it never even got to his desk at all, because the harm in this would be profound.
I appreciate your wanting to do that, and obviously it's just ridiculous that such a bill would even come before the legislature. But I also am concerned, if we should, I guess, save, our capital, whatever, for bills that truly have a possibility of passage, and I really don't see that. And I know it's crazy times, but so that's my thought. I know we have a lot on our agenda tonight, so. But I appreciate your bringing these issues to our attention and to the attention of people who are listening to these board meetings, because I think it is super important for people to pay attention to what is happening in Concord, because there really is just things that you would never have imagined, bills that are being introduced. I can just imagine a teacher seeing two children fighting and saying, I'm sorry, I can't intervene in your fight because I can't teach you social emotional learning. So I know it's some crazy things, but thank you, Gianna. Are there anyone else for board updates? I will just say, to piggyback on Heather, that I did attend the Internet Crimes Against Children presentation. It was extremely well done. It was terrifying, but there was also a really good message. The one that I think I will say is that, rather than parents focusing on, oh, don't go on this app or don't go on that app, it was really, the point was made that any app these days can be used for, nefarious purposes. And it's just really important just to keep that line of communication open and to be aware of what your children are doing, and to make sure that children understand that they can always come to you as a parent. It was pointed out that threats will often backfire. So there was a lot of good information, and I know it's tough to get out in the evenings for these types of things, but I do think we do, try to bring this kind of information every year, 2 years, and I really encourage folks to try and get that information. There's also a website, and perhaps Suzanne will help me when you do your presentation, that people can go on to get more information. So on a lighter note that I'd like to end on for board comments, I did attend the Poetry Out Loud contest. It was actually the first time I was able to go, and I loved it. The students recited they did such a great job in reciting some very difficult poems and putting a lot of passion into their presentation. And so I do appreciate that opportunity and want to congratulate all the participants. All right, moving on, we are up to Assistant Superintendent report.
Good evening. I will begin with ICAC. So we had a wonderful showing at the presentation. There were, I counted 68. There were a few people that counted 71. So it gives you an idea of how many people came, which is absolutely amazing. I connected with Eric Kinsman, who was the force command. He's a force commander, and he's who gave the presentation. Connected with him about having him return in the fall of next year to start earlier in the school year with this conversation. So just to let anyone out there that's interested in attending in the future, we will have him returning hopefully sometime in the fall and earlier in the school year. Coming up We will have Mike Nicolosi, our SRO, going to the schools, the middle school and the high school. He is a trained student presenter for ICAC, and so he is going to be doing some education for students around internet safety for kids. He is, it will be developmentally changed depending on the age of the child, so what he presents to seniors will be very different than what he presents to sixth graders. So he will be working with the principals and working with me to be getting into the school buildings this spring to have those conversations with kids. And right now we're looking at 6 through 12, possibly 5th grade, but we need to talk to Bill about that and go over the presentation and what that would look like. As far as links are concerned, you can go to, ICAC has its own website, and on the website for ICAC, they actually have links. So it's ICAC, taskforce.org, and if you go to that website and on the homepage and you scroll down, you'll see other links and you'll see opportunities for learning for families if they're interested. There's the NetSmarts is another website that was recommended by Eric for people to go to. Family Online Safety Institute was another one. And so if you Google ICAC, it'll come up, and if you go to their homepage, you can find other links. We will also, I can work with Jen also to put that up on our website, but until that gets up on our website, if people are interested in that, you can go to their website to access that information. Does anyone have any questions about ICAC before I? Okay, Reach Summer Camp, I'm so excited. We have our flyer ready to go, and that's gonna be hopefully sent this week. Definitely, if not this week, next week. It's July 8th to August 2nd. It's Monday through Thursday. And then in the morning and then in the afternoon, our Durham Parks and Rec will have an afternoon program for families and for kids. And then Fridays will be the field trip day through Durham Parks and Rec. All of that information is gonna go out this week or next week, and registration is gonna start February 19th, and it's gonna run all the way through April 19th. So we're really excited about that. It will all be housed here at the middle school, which is wonderful, in this nice climate-controlled building. And we will be here with ESY, and the high school will have credit recovery also in the middle school, and other summer program will take place in the middle school. Summer PD planning for faculty has started, so leadership has joined together to have conversations about what our summer reads are going to be and what opportunities we'll be able to provide for faculty to collaborate and work that they may be interested in doing. So faculty will be receiving information about that, hopefully before February vacation, so that they have some time to think about it before they go in and fill out their forms for their interest forms. I just want to reiterate what Becca said about the counseling. This is School Counselor and School Psychologist Week. And I just want to thank our K through 12 counselors and school psychologists for all of the work that they do. They provide our students with daily support. They also provide academic, career, college, and social emotional curriculum that is so very important. So I just want to make sure that they hear that thank you from everybody. I also want to just do a quick thank you to our literacy specialists, Liz Burnham, Cindy Douglas, and Allison Neri for all of their work on our framework, our literacy framework, K through 5. We had another meeting with principals and with the 3 of them, and they've been doing so much work behind the scenes to get us ready for our summer work that we have for our ELA scope and sequence. So I just want to thank them. Now to move on to, I'm going to talk a little bit about the calendar, school calendar revision. So we have, in talking to area schools, it was brought up that we have a state primary election on the 10th of September. there were some concerns expressed about not knowing what that state primary is going to look like. There were some schools that have shifted their May teacher workshop day, if they had a May teacher workshop day, to the 10th of September. So we are, because Dover is one of those schools that we collaborate with and we send our CTE, we send a lot of CTE kids to Dover. They are making that shift, and so what you have in front of you is the recommendation that we do the same. So we would be, next year's calendar, not this year's, next year's calendar in May, we would shift that teacher workshop day over to September so that we would have the same days as Dover. And that does not impact our schedule with Rochester, because Rochester never had a May teacher workshop day, so the kids would just be going to school anyways.
Motion of the board.
Could I have a motion? Tom?
A motion to approve the revised fiscal year 25 school calendar due to the state primary.
I think so we're looking at, it's the 2024-2025.
Correct.
School year calendar.
24-25, yeah.
Okay, and can I have a second? Brian? Any further discussion? Yes, Heather.
I know that in the past, if we've had a lot of snow days, we've sort of taken that teacher workshop day back. Do we think that, I have no problem with this, so I'm going to start there. Do we foresee that maybe extending the school year if we have a big snow year?
If we had a snow year like we had last year, the answer would be yes. So far this year, the answer would be no, knock on wood. So it all depends on that particular weather pattern. We had the same conversation when we were talking about it.
Okay, all in favor of revising the calendar, and that's 7 in favor, and the student rep is in favor. So motion passes.
Great. And before I turn the mic over to Sean Peschel and for our student presentation, I first would like to bring forward the consideration for Sarah Curtin for a half-year sabbatical. On December 5th, the sabbatical committee had their first meeting, and we met a few times prior to sending out the sabbatical application. The application went out January 15th. We began reviewing the applicants on January 17th, and after careful consideration, the committee would like to recommend Sarah Curtin for a half-year sabbatical. Sarah's proposal focuses on integrated learning at the elementary level. She would be working with faculty on a regular basis to create a sustainable framework for integrated learning, as well as supporting teachers to create integrated projects in the classroom. She's looking to have this work be sustained through, similar to what Chris Hall has done with Action Research, but through a professional learning community that she hopes she can build and create to be able to sustain this for a long-term impact.
Can I have a motion to approve the proposed sabbatical? Heather?
A motion to approve the proposed sabbatical for Sarah Curtin.
Second, Tom? Any further discussion? Heather?
I just had a question if the timeline for her sabbatical had been ironed out yet, or if that still works.
So we've been talking to her about a semester sabbatical, just because of her role as a digital learning specialist. We're not, we'll have to see what that looks like as far as supports while she's out. But we're looking at second semester.
Other comments? Okay, all in favor? And 7 in favor, and the student rep is in favor.
Great, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to introduce Sean Peschel, our Extended Learning Opportunity Coordinator for the high school. Sean.
Good evening. Again, Sean Peschel, the ELO coordinator at Oyster River High School. It's been a while since I've seen you. You've all been busy with selecting a superintendent, building a budget and stuff, so on and so forth. So here we are now. And this evening we have some special guests from outside of our community. You may recall when I talk about ELOs, we talk about teacher mentors, so the mentor from inside the building. We also have community partners. So this evening we have some community partners with us to help answer any questions you may have. For them after Stella gives her presentation. Stella's going to be talking to us tonight about her internship experience over the summer. If you recall, the reason why we come in front of you periodically or monthly or every meeting is to bring to life our themes that we have at the high school. So last year's theme was Discover the Possibilities. So during the process of applying for the internship program that Portsmouth Regional Hospital offers, Stella was living in that world. But then we had to flip over the summer to our new theme this year of Empowering Positive Pathways. And so it's very interesting and ironic how Stella's presentation kind of lives in those two worlds. So I also would like to, before I give it over to Stella, I'd like to introduce to you Dylan Brothers. Dylan Brothers is the Academic Partnership Coordinator at Portsmouth Regional Hospital. You may have heard me use his name before in the past. He is kind of the way I sell it to people is that he's the me of the business side. So I work with the students on the student side, and he works with the people in his corporation, his organization, and the business side of things, industry side of things. So.
Awesome, thank you. So,
yeah, you just introduce yourself.
Okay, perfect, yeah. So hi, I'm Stella Pillay-Shore. Use this. Okay. And I'm excited to talk with you tonight about my internship with Portsmouth Regional Hospital. So. Awesome. Okay. So my internship was actually introduced to me through Sean Peschel, through Schoology. And it was a highly competitive process that I participated in last year. I had to submit written answers to multiple questions, a resume, multiple recommendation letters, and then I also had multiple rounds of interviews that I had both in person and over Zoom. But in the end, there were 14 total interns, including me. 9 of us were in high school, 6 were in college, and I was one of the youngest interns there, having just completed my sophomore year of high school, but the age ranged all the way up through those going into their senior year of college. So it was a great experience getting to interact and be around those who were much older than me too. So we were chosen for Portsmouth Regional's second healthcare career exploration program, but I was the first Oyster River student to participate in that. So this was, and I also did this internship for ELO credit with the school. So it was a great partnership opportunity with the school and also with the hospital. This was a 7-week internship, which gave me the opportunity to shadow throughout virtually all departments of the hospital throughout the time period. So each day would basically be me shadowing in a different department. I got a wide range of experiences through that, from shadowing right in the OR, getting to stand right next to the surgeon over the operating table, getting to ask them questions about everything ranging from, you know, how did you get to this place in your life, asking them questions about their surgery, and even asking them what they ate for breakfast that day. I also got to work in places that other staff in the hospital didn't even know existed. For example, the central sterile room, where I got to also help the workers in that room clean operating tools that were used that day. So the rotations included aspects of that, and alongside of that, each of us interns were assigned a leadership mentor. So my leadership mentor was Priscilla Romero, who's vice president of the Human Resources Department. And I worked with her on my summer project. So what our focus was on introducing students in our New Hampshire area to healthcare careers. So what we wanted to do was almost like what I got to access throughout my internship, but what we wanted to do is make this easier for local students to access. So what we decided to do was design and create a healthcare career expo for these students to attend. So the purpose of this expo, like I touched on, was to rebuild that excitement and awareness of healthcare in the community by showcasing a wide range of these career pathways within healthcare. So through that, we wanted to strengthen Portsmouth Regional's community relationships with these schools and also community members, and energizing the staff that worked there by working with these youth directly. The expo took place on Friday, October 20th of last year, 2023, at Portsmouth Regional Hospital, and we had 2 time windows to allow the most amount of schools and students to participate. And the expo had 2 different segments. One was the main expo, where we had 16 different department stations that students could cycle through, and the other aspect was 2 keynote presentations per time window that were given by hospital leaders, and students could choose to attend those and listen in if they wanted to. I think I just skipped over one, sorry. Yes, okay. We also had many methods of engaging attendees. We designed and created career cards that were handed out at each expo station to almost kind of show that each department is a sort of umbrella, and there are many careers that are available within those. So if a student knew that they were interested in a general area like maternity services, for example, they walked over and they saw specific jobs that they were interested in, they could go over, learn more about that, and even take a card home if they found a job that they found particularly interesting. So we had those. That is an example of that up there, the doula. That is actually a picture of me because we couldn't use any actual patients in the images. And we also created a custom passport or checklist for the students to get at the beginning of the expo, and that they would get stamped at each station that they visited to encourage them to visit every station and get the most out of the experience. And we also created and designed our own shirt for the expo that was given to each of the students at the end. So alongside the expo, we also had 2 different keynote speakers. One was Raphael Grossman, a surgeon at the hospital, and he talked to the students a little bit about technology development within healthcare. And another was given by Dean Carucci, who's the CEO of Portsmouth Regional Hospital. And he talked with the students about leadership in healthcare and the future of healthcare careers with them. This is also a slide that I wanted to show you from my original presentation that was given to the hospital board at the end of the summer. And this was showing our estimated attendance that we had. And we did, in fact, have over 200 students attend. This was showing kind of the reach of the area that we wanted to gain. So I wanted to end on this. This is another slide from my original presentation, but I wanted to kind of come back to me and what I got from this experience, because I was able to do so many things, but it also touched me personally, because I started this out, it was just a post in Schoology, and I thought, you know, this is interesting, I want to give it a try, I want to go for that, but it really did truly teach me what I valued, what I saw within healthcare. I truly gained such an experience from being in those ORs. When I first walked in, I didn't know if I was going to faint at the sight of blood, but at the end of that, I mean, I was truly inspired by the surgeons. I saw the teamwork that was put in every day, and I mean, there was so much to be gained from that hospital and that experience. So I'm incredibly grateful to get to share this with you all, because it's really an example of how our school is empowering positive pathways. So thank you. Yeah. Oh yeah, yes, and if you have any questions, I can answer them. We have Dylan and Priscilla here if you guys want to answer them, but yeah.
Stella, can you talk to us about how a busy Oyster River student fits an ELO of this magnitude into their schedule?
Right, I mean, so this was during the summer, so it was almost like a separate job for me. It was 5 days a week, basically 9 to 5, 8 to 4, but I fit it into my schedule because I wanted to fit it into my schedule. It was basically what I would say. During this, I was also attending summer league basketball practices. I was lifeguarding. I made time for this because, I mean, as soon as I started it, I realized that's what I wanted to do. It was during the summer, which was a perfect opportunity for those who are in high school or in college and have other things that they need to do throughout the school year. So that was honestly how I made time for it. But what is amazing about it is that they do it during the school year too, for students who need to attend school, obviously. And I haven't done one of those. But what I can say is for the summer, it was because I wanted to.
Sean, can you tell us how Stella earns a credit for this work?
Sure, yeah. So in partnership with Portsmouth Regional Hospital, it's been, I believe it's been an ongoing internship program that you've had. The summer program has been ongoing for a few years now. And so there's criteria that's developed, and those criteria or objectives of the program, we then convert into competencies. And so Stella, going through the process of meeting all the competencies or all the objectives of the program, then earns her the credit towards her diploma or towards her transcript.
What should she earn a credit in?
It's an ELO credit, so it's listed as ELO. The category, we offer 5 different categories of ELOs, and so internship is one of those categories, and then the medical profession or medical field is kind of the third entry on that line of the transcript. So it's ELO, internship, and then medical field or hospital or what have you. So yes, yeah. Also important to say too, it's a paid internship program too. The summer program is a paid program, so I'll kind of hand it over to Dylan a little bit to talk about his program and what he does.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. Can we give Stella another round of applause? This is my second time seeing this presentation, actually more like 10th, but great job as always. So the expo was such a huge success that we are actually replicating it across our market in New Hampshire. So that's all based on Stella's foundation. So I just want you all to know the lasting impression that she's having on healthcare in New Hampshire, and we get to do it all over again. So good for that.
Are you going to name the presentation after her?
What's that?
Are you going to name the presentation after her?
We might name the expo after her, yeah. I mean, who knows? We'll see. So I'll talk a little bit about 2 things. First, our ELO program that we have during the school year. That's where we work with the students based on their school schedules. Most of them, it ends up being after school hours. They pick a department of their interest, they go through interview processes, and then they come to our units and they're helping answering phones, organizing charts, talking to patients, just basic things to get them to dive deeper into healthcare. We have professional development workshops. We do guest speaking activities. We do a lot of team building activities that they all hate, but I love to do, so we make them do it. And then at the end of the program for the ELO program, they have a presentation where they get to research something in healthcare that they're really interested in. And then they have a gallery walk, and all of our staff members get to ask questions. So that's during the school year. It's unpaid, but they do get school credit for that. The summer internship, and I will say the application's open tomorrow, so Sean, you should get an email from me. Yeah. That's a paid internship. This is what Stella did over the summer. It's 7 weeks rotational. We build out a huge schedule, and every single day they're in a different department. They work with their mentors. Priscilla was Stella's mentor. They get to shadow. And if they tell me, hey, I really love the maternity ward, we'll put them back up there so they get some more experience in that unit. And then after the 7-week program, on the last day, they get to present their projects, and this is what Stella presented. Overall, what these programs are doing, as you guys know, the past couple of years in healthcare have been very challenging. And we're trying to build up that workforce from pre-COVID. And these are just some of the opportunities that we're providing. Not only at Portsmouth, but across our market in New Hampshire. So we have 2 other hospitals in the state. And we're trying everything, right? And we're getting in front of students younger to show them all the different career pathways in healthcare. It's not just nurses and doctors. There's so many different avenues for them to go through. So Stella is a shining example of our students, and we are very, very proud of her. So thank you for giving us this time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Heather.
This one's for Stella. I really liked the way you worked with your team to work through those rotational stations and the bingo card and then the keynote. And my question is, how did the students who attended, they enjoy the rotations more or the keynotes more, or how did that break down, and what would you do if you were planning another one?
Yeah, I mean, I think I really have to go off of what I observed because I was less of a student in that and more of kind of an advisor, but I really thought that they both provided two different aspects, right? They got to walk around, they got to kind of be with their friends a little bit more in the expo, and I think that movement was really great for them. A lot of them, after looking at the expo checklist, a lot of them did get it completely filled out. I mean, I think that they really did engage with that as fully as they could, but what I saw in the presentations was really amazing. I mean, it was a packed audience for every presentation. I watched how they connected with the speakers and seemed to fully listen and ask good questions too. So it's a hard question to answer, and I feel bad for not giving a specific one, but I think that they got different things from both. I think that they got to feel encouraged and inspired from the presentations, and they got to get real kind of information and got to really see, and it was so hands-on. I mean, they provided like pig hearts for them to touch and pretend to operate on. It was hands-on and also inspirational. So I think that they got very different things from both aspects.
That is a superb answer.
Thank you.
Just to add on top of that too, we are invited to another expo that takes place in the spring at a hospital off the 101 corridor, and I must say that this expo blows that one out of the water. Amazing. The staff of the Portsmouth Regional Hospital were amazing. Stella's organizational skills were amazing. It was mind-blowing, and the students that we brought to the expo were, elated and thrilled about what they saw and what they were part of. It's also nice too that HCA is a part of Portsmouth Regional Hospital, Frisbee Memorial Hospital in Rochester, and also Parkland Medical over in Derry. And so with the ELO program that takes place during the school year in the fall and in the spring, the two different programs, because of where we're geographically located, we're able to send students, they've applied to both the Portsmouth Regional Hospital site and also the Frisbee Memorial Hospital site. So some of our Barrington students may live closer on that Rochester side of our region, and so we had, I want to say roughly maybe 5 or 6 students in the program or so, depending upon which site they're at. But yeah, just want to throw that out there real quick.
Oh, yes, Matt.
Stella, what was your favorite rotation?
I loved, so when I was in the CVOR, the cardiovascular operating room, I think that was my favorite. I loved seeing them stop and start the heart with potassium, and it was so cool. But I can also say that I definitely learned that I am an adrenaline junkie, and I love the emergency room. So I think the emergency room or the operating rooms, those are my favorite. Yeah.
And another quick plug for Stella too. When I first met her last spring during the application process, and hey, you've been accepted and you can get credit for this, so on and so forth, we had just kind of had conversation about what are your skills and what are your passions, what are your hobbies, what are your interests, and one of them being art is kind of one of our focus areas. And so, the medical field and art can be seen separate from each other, but actually, when you're that surgeon, you're doing artistic, talented, precise work. So I think the two worlds of where Stella is in her mind and where she wants to go has come together nicely through this experience.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation and a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and so we are on, let's see, we did sabbatical, calendar, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out that as a school board, and as a superintendent, we're not in a classroom, we're not running a building, but the ELO experience that you just heard from Stella is a direct result of this body approving ELO coordinator Sean Peschel's job 9 years ago. These opportunities that exist for our students today are a direct result of a decision that this body made 9 years ago. And so it's pretty exciting to see students do presentations and actually see the product of a decision by a policymaking board materialize in a student at ELO. So thank you for your support over the years. I want to do a quick nomination tonight. So I do not know the last time that our district had a facilities director. We've always contracted out throughout my dozen years. And I know that when Sue was business manager, For the couple of years before that, it was contracted out. So it may be a generation or so since the district has had its own facilities director. It's my honor tonight to nominate Dave Toddy as our first facilities director in so many years. Dave comes with great experiences. He's the facilities director currently in Rochester, and before that, he was their HVAC specialist. So these are both experiences we're desperate for in the district. We've gone a couple of years with kind of a patchwork approach to running our facility department, and so I recommend Dave Toddy to the board as our new facilities director. He should be able to start as soon as April vacation. Maybe we can convince him to come in over the ensuing weeks to get oriented to our district. That's my hope anyway. So I put it before you.
Okay, could I have a motion to approve the new, yes, Director of Facilities? Yes.
So moved.
Okay, and a second. Matt, any additional comments, questions? All right, all in favor? And that is 7 in favor, and the student rep is in favor. Congratulations.
Dave, would you like to just say a few words? Not as long as Stella's presentation, please.
I did not prepare a PowerPoint. Yes, I would like to thank this board, Dr. Morse, the administrators, and the public for this opportunity. And Dr. Morse mentioned that 25 years it's been since you had a director of facilities. And since I put my name into consideration for this job, I'm very excited about the prospect of coming here. When I heard that 25 years, that shifted a little bit. That's not to say I'm not excited to come here, but tonight I'm adding to that excitement, and I'm adding humility, and I'm humbled and honored that you've all chosen to put your trust in me. And I'm eager to see what the next 25 years of infrastructure are going to look like here in Oyster River. So if there are no questions, I'll just end with reiterating my thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Just another update in relation to the competency survey. We've had over 600 student responses and over 300 adult responses as of today. With that number of responses, we would just have trickle from now for another week. So the UNH asked me if I minded closing it a week early with that number of responses so they would have time to compile the results and be ready to give a report to this body on the 21st. I said that makes sense because with 900 responses, we have plenty of data for them to collate. I'm really appreciative greatly of the adult community and our students who took the time to fill out the survey. You may recall the last time we attempted to do a survey, we had a trickling of responses. Again, another credit to the board. Having Jen Brown be able to consistently remind people and give them updates on where we are, the process, just has been an awesome addition to our ability to remind parents and encourage parents. And I want to thank both Bill and Noe for their making sure that the students had an opportunity to fill out the surveys either during flex time or advisory time. So the 21st, we'll be able to see the nexus of all of the work that the committee put in to make sure this survey was something that would be meaningful. And I look forward to the results. And then just before we get into the fair funding presentation, I want to take a moment to thank David Goldsmith and the Mohammed staff. I did it today at the administrative meeting. I've done it privately with David, and he's probably tired of hearing me say, great job. When we had to vacate the Mohammed School, as you can imagine, in any emergency, it was done in a very fast fashion. And, the buses arrived, Dave and the staff moved the kids over to the high school. The high school staff, Rebecca and her administrative staff, lined the hallway, welcoming the little ones into the building. The kids were excited. First grade didn't have an opportunity to have lunch. And so they had it at the high school. They were amazed at having, food at the high school. They were talking about how big the room was. And Noe bent over backwards and Kristen to find a movie that the kids could watch. So from the kids' perspective, it was a field day to the high school. And then the reunification effort with parents, we had sent out an email to the parents on a couple times. Kids are safe, they're at the high school, all's good with the world. But we still had the, parents who wanted to pick up their children. The parents were awesome picking up the children. I was out there the whole time, and they were appreciative, they were supportive. And Dave has had a meeting with his staff about how we could improve the process. We did it administratively about how we could improve the process. And it really comes down to minor details. The Mohammed staff was fabulous, and thanks to great leadership and fast action, we kept the kids in a safe environment while we investigated a bomb scare. So credits to Dave and his staff. And that brings us to the second presentation of the evening. This body
Jim,
has been very much involved in...
Before we go there, I just wanted a question on the competency survey. I was trying to sneak in, but you didn't.
Okay, Heather, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
Oh, no, you're fine. Just mentally preparing for the workload, is it going to be the full, like all the comments, or is it going to be like the first cut and sort of the first report?
I think on the 20, well, we'll have to see, but I think what Sean will focus in on when he's doing his report is the data-driven part of it, as opposed to the comment, because that takes a lot longer to digest. So I think we're going to get the initial brush, if you will, and if we want Sean to come back and do an additional presentation, we can, or we can digest the comments ourselves. Yeah. Sorry, Heather. Does anybody else have any questions about anything I've said so far? I've got to take a breather between comments, I guess. So it brings us to the presentation on funding. This school board has been involved in a fight with 18 other school systems engaged in the Conval lawsuit, which the judge came out in favor of all of us collectively. So this organization is about equity in funding across New Hampshire. And, we live in an area where people can afford to provide the kind of education that we've seen in presentations tonight, in the article that Tom alluded to. We have a capacity here that we can supplement the state's lack of funding pretty heavily, and we do. 80% of our budget is local. However, other school systems in the state don't have that capacity. And really, that's the nexus of why we joined the lawsuit, because we believe that every student in New Hampshire deserves a quality education. And that means the state has to step up and support education far more fully than they do today. We are the lowest state-funded public school system in the country. And with that, I'd introduce our guests.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having. Oh, we good? Okay.
Just make sure it's up by your.
Up high. All right. Thank you for having me. My name is Zach Sheehan. I'm the executive director of the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project. Is that good? Hearing? You guys hear me?
Yeah, you really got to keep that microphone close to your voice.
All right. And first off, thank you for giving me the time this evening. It's been really great to sit and listen, and I appreciate the introduction. I get to go to a lot of different school boards, schools around the state, and just hearing all the incredible things happening in Oyster River is frankly inspiring. And I think is, the crux of our organization is, as Dr. Morris mentioned, is advocating and educating folks around the state about school funding in New Hampshire, the reliance on property taxes, and kind of the interplay between state level policy and local decisions, local budgets. But I think to underscore that is that if you look at averages around New Hampshire, we do really well. We spend a lot of money per student. We have relatively high outcomes. On kind of the metrics on average, we perform really well compared to the rest of the country. When you dig one layer deeper, there's deep inequities, both in funding levels, opportunities, teacher salaries, turnover, percentage of graduates, et cetera, from district to district, sometimes right next to each other. And so this presentation is something that we do all over the state. It's really the bulk of the work we do as an organization. I've kind of chopped it down a bit for tonight, and I just want to kind of give an overview of it. I can pause and take questions throughout, so please just flag me down. I'm happy to answer questions as we go. And my hope is that following this, we could do a presentation. We do kind of community-wide ones where they're at a separate date and time. The whole community is invited. And it's a really good way to get folks out to learn about this as well, and then answer questions, engage with the public. So maybe that's something we could do in the months down the road. Do I have control over the slides here? Great. All right, so at a high level, this is both about taxpayers and students. And what we try to do is blend those together because they are really intrinsically linked. Sometimes we lean a little too heavily in one direction or sometimes a little too heavily in the other, but it's both about property taxpayers and students, as I know school boards are pretty familiar with. It's not a stagnant problem, and it's very unconstitutional. The recent Conval ruling was mentioned. I'll dig into the specifics of that, but to date there's basically been no evidence presented in any of the lawsuits over the decades, specifically not in the Conval one, that how we're doing things now is right, logical, makes any sense, or is constitutional, but pretty much in any way. So to give kind of a overview of two communities, we do this kind of all over the state. Just when people hear the word inequity, sometimes they have different things they're thinking of. So here's two high schools, one in Hanover, one in Claremont. These are pretty stark examples, but not unique to different schools throughout the state. And you can see just the dramatic differences in both outcomes. We looked at 11th grade reading, or math and reading here, just graduation rates. If students decide to take AP tests to try to get the credit for college, generally 3 or above is good for credit in college. And you can look at the difference there, 40% in Claremont versus 91%. Teacher salaries, some communities we go to talk about how they have such high turnover rate because as soon as a teacher gets 2-3 years of experience, they can drive 15 miles and make $20,000 more for the same job. New Hampshire's a small state, a lot of school districts really close together, and that type of ability to pay teachers, not always, but is very connected to the relative property value and the ability of a community to raise that money. I will make a note on that point, though, that doesn't mean communities don't try. Claremont just last year, I think, passed a $1 million increase to their budget specifically for teacher pay increases. So that was an active decision by the property taxpayers of that time to say, we are going to raise our own taxes, which are some of the highest in the state, to try to pay our teachers more and keep them here. So it's not a different goal or different desire for their students. It's just a kind of capacity of that community. And then you can see that the education taxes, the result here is pretty dramatic. One community has lower taxes, and so which means they have a significantly lower amount that they're paying on the same value home, and yet they're able to provide a much higher education for their students. A little more stage setting, kind of where we are currently. So folks might have heard of the Commission to Study School Funding. It was a legislative commission. It ran throughout 2020. They put $500,000 behind it, which for any of you who follow the legislature know that that is a remarkable amount of money. Normally they are operating on just volunteers, just legislators meeting. So to have $500,000, a statewide organization come in and do some serious data crunching to look at the state of school funding in New Hampshire. And it's a long report, and definitely encourage everyone to take a look at it, but the kind of punchline was, yeah, it's inequitable for both students and taxpayers. And not only that, but there's this negative relationship between relative poverty and outcomes. Not anything new for anyone that's been looking at this or working in this field, but helpful to have different data, a refreshed look at it. The other big picture, and Dr. Morris mentioned this at the beginning, is just how much we rely on property taxes in New Hampshire. The state provides the least amount of funding for a public education system as a percent of the total than any other state in the country, by a long shot. If you give the state credit for SWEPT, which I'll get into a little bit later how that is not really a state tax, but if you give them credit for that, we're still dead last. And the local property taxpayers make up the largest proportion. Sometimes folks are a little surprised by the lottery number here. They think that just because of all the advertising, the lottery gives a lot more money to public education. This is, by statute, all of the lottery minus winnings and administration, all of that, and it really only makes up a pretty small amount of the total pie here. So a little bit of background going back to the Claremont lawsuits. The reason we dig into this is because kind of the constitutional foundation for both the Conval lawsuits, which you all are involved in, and the suits since then, and kind of a lot of our advocacy work rests on these Claremont decisions. In the 90s, there's a number of school districts, Claremont being the first named, taxpayers and parents and students. And I think this is helpful to remember because just like you all had to deliberate, decide if you were going to join onto this lawsuit, that's a significant decision, both by a school board but also by normal citizens to join into a lawsuit. And they effectively were arguing that the state was not giving enough money to schools, specifically some school districts, to provide that adequate education. They won after many, many, many years and many, going back to the Supreme Court a number of times, two major Claremont decisions, two major principles. One, the state has this duty to pay for a constitutionally adequate education, period, for every student K through 12 in the state. Two, this is another important piece, again, this kind of tax and student outcome. The taxes used must be uniform across the state. One note on the word adequate, not a great word for what they were trying to get across, frankly. But they did explain in the ruling that adequate is not just the bare basics. It's future-oriented. It's what do students need to succeed in the environment they are graduating into. The Supreme Court kind of understood that whatever they were just defining as necessary in 1997 was not going to be so in 2007, let alone 2024 and beyond, right? So this is kind of an expansive, future-oriented definition here. Following those rulings, and to keep in mind, you know, we're right in a very interesting and similar context right now following some judicial rulings. Following those rulings, there were major policy reforms at the state level. A number of policies proposed. The one that took hold was the creation of a new tax, the statewide education property tax, AKA SWEPT. Folks don't often realize when we talk about taxes, it doesn't have to be additive. So this new property tax was created, added $6 to everyone's property tax bill. The average property tax rate in the state went down even when including that increased $6. How is that possible? Because that increased $6 helped level out some of the deep inequities. So everyone's paying that, the money is going to the state to fulfill the state's obligation for the education, remember those two constitutional principles, and that meant a little more money with the adequacy formula that, you know, we still have pieces of it today. More of that money went to districts with higher need, right? So they got to have some property tax relief because they were getting additional support for special education students on free and reduced lunch, so students living in poverty, et cetera. And so it kind of really helped level out some of the deep valleys in property tax rates around the state. This is the part where things continue to kind of have gotten worse over the years. So SWEPT is currently still called the statewide education property tax. The state never touches that money. They take credit for it, but they never touch it. So it is raised, retained, kept locally. You have to administer it at the rate the state tells communities to, but it never actually goes to the state, which sets up kind of some funky systems that the RAND lawsuit, the other school funding lawsuit, is looking to address. It also creates a kind of odd phenomenon where there's actually communities that have negative property tax rates. I don't know if anyone here has the luxury of having a negative property tax rate, but it sounds kind of nice. And that's because the tax is kept locally, if you have a community with no students, or you might only have 1 or 2 students, you have to raise that money, but you can only spend it on education, so you'd have kind of an ever-expanding pool, because it doesn't actually go to the state anymore. So you set a negative local rate to offset it. There's been a number of other decisions. Since Claremont and Londonderry, they kind of reaffirmed and solidified that whatever the state defines as an adequate education, it must pay for. Now this set up something that we're getting into with the Conval lawsuit, which it kind of created an incentive for the legislature to keep their definition pretty narrow and make sure that the definition in law maybe didn't reflect the definition in the minimum standards, which are much more expansive, right? So that in law, that's pretty narrow, so they can kind of continue funding that a small amount. And over this past decade, the changes in school funding almost entirely have been downshifted onto the local communities. Over $600 million increase on property tax expenditures for schools, whereas the state's increase has been $47 million over that past decade. And then we've continued to have a number of legislative commissions studying this issue. There's ample data. It's not a problem of understanding that there are deep inequities in the system and they produce different outcomes. It's really, political will of folks in Concord not wanting to kind of make changes here. So a quick piece for how the adequacy aid is currently calculated. And this is using the new numbers that were just passed in the last state budget. Every student in the state gets $4,100 per student in base adequacy. Now this base adequacy is the crux of the Conval lawsuit, right? The theory behind base adequacy is that that should be what the school district can educate a student on who does not need any additional services that might cost additional money, $4,100. And then they add on $2,300 for students eligible for free and reduced price lunch. That's not for the actual meals, that's a marker of poverty. In general, students coming from poverty, in general, need access to additional resources, so let's try to capture that. $800 for students with English language learners. Again, those are additional services that cost a little more money. And same for students receiving special education services. Just to show you kind of how out of whack these numbers are, does anyone know, on average, the additional cost for special education services, for example? $28,000. As an average, right? Some of the more expensive students like out-of-district placements pull that, but just to show you that this formula in general is trying to do something equity-minded, take a look at who needs more resources, but it is just nowhere close to how much districts actually need. Here's actual expenditures in green. This is how much money communities are actually spending per student. And the smaller bar is the state's total calculated cost of an adequate education. They add up those numbers in this previous slide and get these smaller amounts. No school district in the state comes even close to be able to operate at the level that the state has for their adequacy calculation. And this is where I said that the state takes credit for SWEPT. So you look at Oyster River's number on the left. That blue bar, that's SWEPT. The state is taking credit for that, and yet it's local property taxpayers raising the money for that. So instead of giving the full, what would that be? A little over $4,500 per student, the state's actually only contributing that $2,700. I'll breeze through this next part a little bit because it's a little bit more of an example in the absurd, but just to prove the point, and this example, we did this exercise with Pittsfield about 5 years ago, and it actually was an exhibit in the Conval lawsuit. We asked a business administrator and a superintendent in Allenstown to take their budget that they were operating under, that was passed by the voters, was being worked on actively, and cut it down to the amount of money that the state had given in adequacy funding. So basically you had to go from the green bar per student down to the blue bar. And here are some of the cuts they made. And for anyone familiar with any of these, you might recognize that some of these violate state law, federal law, collective bargaining agreement, minimum standards. You couldn't do most of these cuts even if you, for some reason, wanted to. Here's another page. All plumbing. All substitutes gone. Here's another page. All ground maintenance. Eliminate the SAU costs. Even after all those cuts, Allenstown, they tuition their kids into Pembroke Academy. And so for this hypothetical exercise, they were like, well, we can't control Pembroke's tuitioning amount, so we'll just stop paying for that. So we're not going to send our kids to high school. And then they had to cut half of the remaining classroom teachers to get down to that state's number. Again, an exercise in the absurd, but it proves the point and shows how out of touch the state's numbers actually are when looking at what it actually costs to run schools and how much we're actually investing in our schools around the state. This is the same slide we saw before, just kind of highlighting the high reliance on property taxes. And to show the kind of difference when we're looking at property taxes and the relative ability of a community to raise that money. Why does that matter so much? So to take an example, say Oyster River needed to buy something for $10,000, and Rochester also did. Oyster River, in this example, has an equalized property value, so the amount of money you're able to raise from your property values of $1 million. You apply that $10 tax rate, you've got your $10,000. Down the road, Rochester, their property value is only $400,000. So the same tax rate doesn't go as far. To raise the same amount of money, Rochester has to have a tax rate 2.5 times as high. Much higher tax rate, same revenue. And what we see is that equalized value per pupil, which again is this concept of the amount of taxable property behind each student, kind of helps us compare apples to apples, Manchester to Brentwood to Oyster River. It shows a relative fiscal capacity of a community to raise that money to support their schools. Most students in the state come from communities with below average equalized value per pupil. And that's important because when you rely so heavily on property taxes, your ability to raise money through property taxes is a very important metric of your ability to, for example, be able to redirect resources following a pandemic to get your scores up, to address them where needed, right? Some communities might have a harder time doing that. And what this does is it leads to a really regressive tax structure in New Hampshire. Some folks might be thinking we're getting a little away from schools at this point, but we'll bring it back. The point here is showing that the larger bar, this is, that actually just came out about 2 weeks ago. It's this national organization that does this every 5 years, and showing the percentage of income that people pay based on their household incomes. Lowest on the left, highest on the right. And what you see that in general, in New Hampshire, the more money you make, in general, the smaller amount of that goes to taxes. Largely due from property taxes. If you're living in those communities that need to raise the property tax rates because you have a lower amount of property to tax, you're going to increase the relative rate. Kind of the point we're going to at the end of all this is that it's really important for folks to engage at the state level because the policies made there really impact or don't impact school funding and the ability for taxes. One change recently was the reduction of the interest and dividends tax. It's about $150 million a year that the state will no longer be getting. And you can see here the same group's analysis. That tax will largely affect folks making over $330,000 a year. All right, we already went through that. Okay, so now to jump into the 2 new lawsuits. So the Conval lawsuit, I imagine all of you are very familiar with it, seeing as you are plaintiffs. It, at its most basic, was saying the base adequacy, that $4,100, it was $3,800 when the lawsuit was filed 4 years ago, is just not enough to provide an education to a student that needs no additional resources. Conval did a lot of work, to come up with kind of what is the cost then, right? Do we include transportation? How much? Do we include nurses? How much? If we're looking at average teacher salaries, do we take average teacher salaries? Do we take just first-year teacher salaries? But you can't staff a school with just first-year teachers, so you have to take maybe third-year teacher salaries. Do we include benefits? Healthcare costs have gone way up. To really try and take a holistic, realistic approach and look at how much it actually costs to provide education at that base adequacy level. And after 4.5 years, the decision came out the Monday before Thanksgiving, and the judge said, yeah, I agree. And specifically what he did is he walked a very fine line. And he said, Conval is asking for just under $10,000 per student. The state basically said, no, our number's fine. Here's the number that I think it is at the floor, $7,300 per student. But it's likely much higher. Even this number is significantly lower than any evidence I've seen presented to be able to run a school at that base adequacy amount. Here's a little bit about how the judge got to the $7,300 per pupil, but it's really, again, important to point out that he was saying it's not my job to set the final number. That's a legislative branch. But what I'm trying to do is enforce the Constitution, enforce these previous rulings, and say that this is the bare minimum. It's likely much higher than that. He also pointed out that the state presented absolutely no evidence to justify the current amount of money that they're sending to school districts. No evidence. They spent their entire case just attacking Conval's number. We actually found out recently that they also spent over $1 million hiring lawyers from St. Louis to come into New Hampshire to provide no evidence of their current funding scheme. And so a lot of folks, after seeing this ruling, are seeing that this is going to be an overall increase in the amount of money we're spending on schools to the tune of the roughly $500 million. The thing is that this is a shift in who is responsible. The state, again, is responsible for providing that adequate education to all of our K through 12 students. Right now, the state is not providing that. Local property taxpayers are largely. So if the state were to provide, $7,300 per student instead of $41, the theory is that there'd be a shift off of local property taxpayers. This is not a ruling saying we need to spend this much more money on public schools in general, but who's paying and how much needs to go more to the state to help relieve some of the inequities around the state. The other lawsuit that is currently happening is the tax side. So this is the Rand lawsuit. It's a group of taxpayers. This is Steve Rand. He's a hardware store owner in Plymouth. That's why it's named the Rand lawsuit. And they sued in June 2022, basically saying, as taxpayers, we're supposed to pay equal rates to fund education. That's what the Claremont suit said. But my tax rates in Plymouth are way different than those in Waterville Valley. We're in the same school district. Or what about in Pennacook? Pennacook's a village of Concord. They have a seat on the Concord City Council. They're technically Concord, but they send their kids to a different school, so their education tax rates are different than their neighbors in Concord 300 yards down the road. How can that be possible? It's pretty clear that it needs to be equal tax rates. They also have an adequacy element to this lawsuit, saying that they think the base adequacy should be closer to the average spent around the state, which is about $18,000 or $20,000 if you include transportation. This lawsuit is currently on pause, but they did get a ruling the same day as the Conval one on one specific piece. They pulled out of their lawsuit the constitutionality of SWEPT, right? So SWEPT, the statewide education property tax, was originally enacted to go to the state, like all of the other taxes, state taxes we have, go to the state, but then to be used to pay for the state's obligation for providing public education. But since currently now communities keep that, and they also keep the excess, this part of the lawsuit they pulled out pointed out that that is unconstitutional and the negative tax rates should be unconstitutional. And the judge agreed on both accounts. It was a pretty clear ruling. The plaintiffs use all the state's own data. The judge didn't provide any additional pieces to that, and he actually said that they need to comply by this April. That will likely get stayed because both of these are being appealed. One more note on the kind of timeline of all of this, the Conval case, and just as a reminder also, you don't have to appeal cases. That's a common misconception. The state could have just said, okay, we'll do our best to fix this and not appeal it. In Pennsylvania last year, there was a similar appeals or district level ruling. Same concept, 30 years of lawsuits back and forth. Judge wrote a 300-page ruling saying, yeah, you're really not funding schools. It's deeply inequitable. And the lieutenant governor and House Speaker, whoever the plaintiffs were, said, okay, we're not going to fight this anymore. We're not going to waste more taxpayer dollars. We're just going to get to work and try to address this. My best guess is that our state is going to appeal both of these decisions, and they'll go to the Supreme Court. And every time I ask a lawyer, they tell me they have absolutely no idea how long that will take, but probably 12 to 16 months before we get a ruling. But regardless of that ruling, and even in the current rulings from Conval, at the end of the day, this is solved or not solved at the legislature. It's state level policy. It is the legislature's job to control raising revenue and spending it. The adequacy formula is just a law. There was a bill in this past year that would have raised base adequacy to $10,000, just like the Conval case asked for. It's just a law. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of figuring out how to do that, but it is a very straightforward mechanism to change these. Last year in the budget, there was a significant increase in school funding, due in large part to pressure from the Conval lawsuit, school boards like you all getting engaged, telling the legislature you needed more funding, providing specific examples. I can kind of give the big picture, but hearing from specific administrators, school board members about why that money matters, how you're trying to balance property taxes in your school budget was really impactful. It was a significant increase in the last year's budget, but just to give you kind of a context, really a pretty small piece of overall funding still. All right, so this is the last slide. Just wanted to throw out a few bills that are being heard right now. Again, to give this kind of, the lawsuits are incredibly important, right? But we've had really strong rulings in the past, and the legislature has basically said, oh, never mind. We'll do a little bit, but then it's just kind of backslide in a few years. So the lawsuits are an important tool. They help build a lot, they help give us a lot of data, a lot of attention, a lot of pressure. They're really critical pieces, but that next step is legislation and folks getting engaged to kind of show why different pieces are helpful. There's a bunch of bills up here. I can answer questions about these, but I will just kind of summarize where the potential positive changes. 4 of these bills were put into a special subcommittee in House Education. They pulled in House Finance members, House Ways and Means members, which is a pretty unusual practice given how many bills they all have to deal with. And the subcommittee met a few times basically saying, what do? We have this bill to increase base adequacy to $10,000. We have another bill to really increase the special education differentiated aid. We have another bill to kind of change the whole formula itself. What can we do with these? They met a few times. We're kind of leaning towards, you know what, this is really complicated. There's a lawsuit, let's just not do anything and come back to it next year. A whole bunch of people wrote into them saying, hey, you can't just do nothing. Like, you have to make some progress and then continue working on it. And as of last Friday, so we'll see, things always change in the legislature, but they are planning, at least in House Education, to amend these down and basically do a $100 million increase this year. A little bit in free and reduced lunch, a little bit in special education, a little bit in fiscal capacity disparity, which takes into account a community's property values. Just to kind of do a little bit using surplus in the Education Trust Fund, and then come back to that again next year. This is one step in the process. It would still have to go to another House committee, then the Senate, maybe another Senate committee, then the governor's desk. So far from over, and plenty of opportunity for boards like you all to engage, just to kind of show why that's important. But that is, there's a positive things moving, not in the scale of solving the whole problem, but definitely folks are feeling the pressure to take this seriously and not just kick it down the can another road, kick it down the can another year. So in summary, happy to answer any questions. It's about both students and taxpayers. It's not a stagnant problem, and it's not a stagnant problem, and it's felt more aggressively in some districts rather than others. The gap is really widening, and it's deeply unconstitutional, and the solution lies with state-level lawmakers. So one last thing, and then I'm happy to answer any questions, is that I would love to work with all of you, whether you have questions about, as an organization, we try to kind of do these types of presentations, also help people navigate the legislative process. It can be very confusing and kind of hard to engage with, so always happy to answer questions about when bills are happening, best way to contact folks. And I really hope that we're able to work together to put on a maybe slower and more in-depth one of these for the whole community, maybe sometime later in the spring. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I've had a packed agenda tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Brian?
Just a note on the Convale appeal. The state appealed, just mostly for all of you, the state appealed not the dollar amount, because they knew that was a low number. They appealed on the jurisdiction of the court. Oh, right. So yes. If you, just goes to show they know that number, even the number they came up with is low. But just to give you an idea how that affects this district, if we utilize that low number today, that would bring us $7 million into this district, just to give you an idea. And that's the low end. If it were at 10,000, you're probably looking at $9,000 to $10,000 at that. But I mean, it's just, the state knows that they have to do something. It's just the problem with the split legislature like we have. It's just, it's tough to get something that's veto-proof through, or to get bipartisan support. So that's half the that's most of the battle actually. Yeah. Right now is there's so much differing views, and some people are. I'll leave it at that. So.
One positive note on that, because we, depending on where we're presenting or kind of how we're introduced, we get a lot of questions about kind of how partisan this issue can be. And in education, there are, as you know, some issues that fall on party lines more than others. The subcommittee I just mentioned, the vote to recommend this $100 million increase was 5-1, and it included both the chair, vice chair, and then the ranking Democrat and deputy ranking Democrat. So that's positive. You don't see a lot of bipartisan stuff in the education committee, especially, and so it's nice to see that bipartisanship.
Tom?
My understanding is that Claremont too said that you couldn't target money to certain districts, so that you couldn't take money and then target it to poorer districts, which my understanding is the David Lunow bill is the bill, one of the bills before the House Education Committee is more of a targeted bill, which kind of makes sense because you want to get money to the districts that are hurting. But that Andrew Valinsky would argue that violates Claremont 2, that Claremont 2 kind of would restrict that, and that's kind of the extent of my understanding, which may be totally wrong. But even there's this kind of tension into how Claremont 2 would allow you to do certain things that you need to do, or might need to do.
Yeah. So, so part of the concern around that bill from Representative Luneau, which would, in short, I mean, the really, really high-level explanation of it is it would add into the adequacy formula, it would add a calculation of how much a community can raise with a $5 tax rate, right? Take that number and subtract it from their adequacy grant. So the idea being you could kind of put in a calculation of a community's relative wealth, but that would result in some communities with higher property value not getting any funding from the state, right? The idea being that's equitable because then more money would go to lower communities with lower property value. One of the concerns is that because of the Claremont rulings, the state can't give no money to some communities, regardless of how wealthy they are. So I guess to answer your question, there are differing views even among proponents of increasing school funding and equity about how to best do it. But I would say that focusing on, and some folks don't think the Conval case goes far enough because it's only looking at base adequacy, right? It's not taking into account the differentiated aid pieces. But I think what we try to do is highlight that all of these are valid approaches and maybe figuring them out so that no one gets hurt, but not get lost in the whose idea is better, if you will, is always a fine dance, I guess. But David Linneau's bill they'll hold on to it and study it throughout the summer.
Okay, any others? Thank you. Oh, did you have something, Gianna?
This is a real quick one, or actually it's really not real quick, so I might actually have to talk to you afterwards or a different time. Is wondering whether or not your organization has looked at the effect of expanding vouchers on how the adequacy funding would be working, considering it's coming from that pool of money. Has that been looked at?
So because any money, so because the education, like the adequacy fund must be funded, so even if it were to go over the education trust fund, it would just dip into the general fund. The real kind of challenge with vouchers or education freedom accounts is that they create competition for already scarce dollars. And so that's, I guess, the kind of high-level way of putting it. But yeah, I mean, any changes to how much money there is in the education trust fund definitely can create, that many more roadblocks to increasing funding for public schools. The subcommittee is looking at doing this $100 million increase because there's that much money in the education trust fund as a surplus. They're kind of playing with that dollar amount. We have this leftover money. Let's do this one-time increase. If some of the voucher expansion bills were to be in place, that wouldn't be there. So I guess it's a long way of saying that taking money from a cash strap system, I don't think is a helpful way to go.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Very informative. And I assume that is your contact information in the, perhaps if folks could have your contact information if they wanted to, contact you directly for more information or to have a conversation.
Yes, I think it's in there. I can also, I know we've been communicating, my colleague's been communicating with someone to help set this up, so we can make sure that everyone gets it, and definitely would love to stay in touch.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Okay, what we're going to do, because I know Maeve has been very patient in her updates, so we're going to go ahead, if folks don't mind. I know business administrator is next, but, and actually, I guess maybe you weren't quite done. Do you want to finish yours? And then what I wanted to do was give Maeve a chance to do her update and then perhaps take a break.
So mine is really easy. I just wanted to let the board know that after last night's deliberative session, we have a number of positions that will be open in the spring due to the retirement incentive. And I'm going to put those positions out now as opposed to waiting until the budget's approved, because there's no reason to, because the default budget is really the music position and the mental health position. And based on the success we've had in attracting the facility director applicants and the HR applicants, I want to try a winter advertisement to see if, we draw other people that hours of high quality. So I'm going to start advertising, and I just wanted to let you guys know that if you see them in the paper, what's going on. That's it.
Thank you. And I hope it's all right, Amy, if okay. So Maeve, why don't you go ahead and give us your update?
Perfect. All right, it'll be pretty brief, but we just had midterms a couple weeks ago, so we're transitioning into the next semester of high school, so new classes. We recently had Coffee House, which was a great turnout. I think it was over 100 people, which is the most we've ever had, which is great. So I'd like to thank, on behalf of Evermore, thank everybody for coming out. We have electives fair next week, and we have like a trifecta of meets this weekend with the track, ski, and swim teams all meeting this weekend. That's what I got.
Can I just ask, what did you think of the midterm schedule? I guess it sort of was shifted a little bit, and what are your thoughts on how it went?
Definitely. I really liked it. There's a lot of flexibility time, and since I had time to work on my stuff, wasn't overwhelmed at all. We had a lot of review time as well, which I thought was great. I thought it went really smoothly, and from other students who gave me feedback, they also thought it went really well. So,
any other questions for me? All right, well, thank you. And so what I'd like to do right now is, because I know folks have been a little like, we need to take a little break. So we'll just take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and hear from our business administrator and some of the other items on our agenda, and then we can talk about whether we want to continue with our school board of self-evaluation tonight or postpone that. So let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Alexander, are we ready to start? Okay. We are back in session, and we will continue with our agenda, and our next item is the Business Administrator Report.
Good evening. In your packet, you will find the half-year financial report for the district. As of February 1st, the budget is in a good place. Currently, we are showing 95.6% of the budget either spent or encumbered. We are in line with previous year's spending. As a point of reference, last year the district had spent or encumbered 94.2% of the budget. So we're in a good place and we're trending as usual. Does anybody have any questions?
Do you have a sense of what the budget, unexpended budget will be? The budget, what's the term I'm trying to think of?
Fund balance.
Fund balance
Fund
will
balance.
be, is it still way too early to have a sense of that?
It's a little too early to have a sense of that, but after last night's deliberative session, we need to hold on to $500,000 of fund balance to offset revenues. And if the 2 warrant articles pass for the trust funds, we need to make sure we have another $125,000 for each. So that of the number you're looking at right now, the 2.2 million, you would take off 750,000 from that.
Okay.
So, but hopefully when we get to April or May, we'll have a much firmer number for you.
Okay.
Are there other questions? Anyone? All right.
Great,
Glad to hear that we're looking good. Hopefully we don't use too much of our snow budget, our snow removal budget.
It's going well.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, and Finance Committee, nothing for that. So we are on unanimous consent, and we have 3 items on unanimous consent. Unless anyone wants to pull any of these out, I will motion that doesn't look like anybody needs to pull anything out. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve our unanimous consent agenda, which includes a motion to approve the nomination of the Oyster River Middle School Assistant Principal, to approve the Mastway maternity leave of absence from June 4th, 2024 to the end of the school year, and to approve the Oyster River Middle School maternity leave of absence from May 13th of this year to the end of the school year. Can I have a second? Gianna? All in favor? And that is 7 in favor. Next up is our facility fees. Do we want the Finance Committee to, what changes have you made to it? Or is that for Amy? Okay.
So the only change that we made onto the document was including the definition on whether a PTO or a booster was going to be, not have to pay the fees. And I'm trying to think what else. We made a change, just a little other, superintendent just wanted to make sure that people knew if they had rented the athletic field for the track, that they were not going to have the track or the field at the same time. It was like one rental. You couldn't have 2 events going on at the same time. But other than that, the fee schedule, we did not make any changes from the last meeting.
All right, yes, Tom.
And you had asked a question on having the multi-day, the charge for a full day, if it was going to be cost prohibitive. We did an analysis, and we do have NHIAA come and do big tournaments, but we don't charge them for the use of the field, but we get the money from the concessions. So we don't really have a lot of people that are renting our facilities for a whole day.
I still think that the other comparable schools have a day rate. And if Oyster River, for some reason, wanted to have a tournament for a whole day, say, ORYA wanted to have a tournament for a whole day, which I could imagine, that would cost, say for 8 hours, that would cost $1,060, so 120 times 8, okay? Which is double, almost double what any other school charges for a daily rate. So maybe this is not going to happen, but I would prefer that we have a daily rate for both the turf field and for and the other thing is that if you compare it to the other towns, they don't charge for other fields at the same rate that they charge for the turf field, which I think makes sense. I mean, to charge for the softball field the same as so I would prefer that would be maybe half the rate of the turf field, with a maximum maybe of 300, which I think puts it in line, because I think we're out of line now for daily rates with the other towns, with the other school districts. I mean, and really quite ways out of line. So that's I would prefer we make that kind of change. I mentioned that the last time, and it wasn't changed, so I don't know if it's been discussed, but and we don't have to necessarily decide tonight, but just to think about, over $1,000 would be, I think, a lot to charge like ORYA to use a field for a day. To me, maybe other people think differently.
Other comments?
I agree with Tom. I think there should be a maximum daily rate, and separating things out for fields based upon the cost to us to maintain and replace them should be taken into account.
Why don't we bring this back to the Finance Committee and we can hash it out a little bit and get it squared away and bring it back.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. So Finance Committee will take another look at it, taking Tom's suggestions into account, and we will bring it back. Dan?
Just one other thing for consideration. During off hours, or in particular over the summer when our bathrooms would not otherwise be available and perhaps we wouldn't want to make them available, commonly other schools, at least anecdotally that I've observed, have porta potties, and I know we've done that in a very limited capacity in the past, but that would be something, I think I think we have to have a facility available to people that are, so let's say we're renting our softball field for a doubleheader, people are there for 3+ hours. I will also anecdotally tell you I've observed people making their way into the woods, and that's not something we want. So that should be something we should factor in. If we're going to be, if there is the demand and we're going to be doing it, we should look at sort of building that cost in.
All right. Next on our agenda is our self-evaluation. So I just want to get a sense of the board, whether we also still have 2 non-publics meetings that we also need to have. And the question I have for you folks is, do you want to continue and do our self-evaluation now, or if the late hour? If we postpone it to our next meeting, I would like to suggest that we start our meeting a half hour earlier. And the reason for that is that we do have Rachel on the agenda at 8 o'clock to do her DEIJ presentation to us. So I'd want to make sure, I don't know, starting at 7, if that would allow us enough time to do our self-evaluation and our other regular business. So that would be my suggestion, is if people want to wait for the next meeting, as to if, I don't know how people feel, if people would be able to get here for 6:30. And I'm open to however people feel about it. We could also just keep going if people want to do that.
I think we should push it off. I think we should push it off.
So is everyone okay with a 6:30 start for our next meeting? Okay, so we will go ahead and do that then.
Do you need a motion for that, Jim?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. We just need to know that Wendy needs to publish it.
Okay.
So as long as Wendy publishes it, it's legal.
Yeah. All right, so then what our other next item is, are any committee updates? Do we have any committee updates tonight? Heather?
Sorry, if I don't fix it in my calendar right now, I'll go forget. Okay, so sustainability met on the 22nd, and we got some really cool stuff happening. The middle school SES Club is gearing up for Earth Week. the 5 days of Earth Week, or when it will be observed in the school, because the break makes things a little weird. They're looking at Market Monday, Trashless Tuesday, Waste Aware Wednesday, Thrifty Thursday, and Film Friday is the current branding. They're very clever, those middle school students, and so I'm really interested and excited to see how that evolution continues. The high school SUS Club is also coordinating with the middle school SUS Club, so they can try to coordinate some of those events together and do things sort of district-wide. We have the one of the projects from one of the high school sustainability club members from her work at the Youth Climate Leaders Academy over the summer. Her project worked on anti-idling, and so they have procured signs for the high school and middle school to try to remind parents in pickup or people just sitting around to turn off their cars to save on fuel and emissions. And Mastway has been doing some really cool stuff. Susan Leifer is one of the folks that run their club, and before Christmas they hand sewed gift bags so they could create reusable holiday present giving. And then the fourth graders are going to work on a project building schools out of Lego, but building energy efficient schools. And there's an idea to pair those fourth graders who are creating these dream Lego schools with energy efficiency with fifth graders who can take them around and show them an actual school with a bunch of these features in it, meaning this one. And so that idea is super cool. I'm really excited to see it happen. And I just looking through my notes. There's other stuff happening, but I'll parse it all down. We have a community dinner on April 11th, and that date has been confirmed. And the Mastway production of Wonka Jr. will be after it. And so put that on your calendars and then stay and watch the Mastway production. Should be great. And the last bit is that we're going to start taking a look potentially at paper use data within the district because they've got all that data coming off the copy machines, and so understanding how we use paper. And that is, we have another meeting coming up, but I don't have it written down, so it's coming.
Great, thank you. That's really neat to hear how enthusiastic the students are. Cool. Yes, Tom.
Well, we've already approved a sabbatical, and Sarah Curtin's excellent proposal. So the sabbatical committee obviously met a number of times. One issue that's come up that I think comes to the question of the definition of what the sabbatical should be for. And going back, I can't speak for the people that approved it. I was, involved when we set it up. And certainly my understanding was that it should primarily be for teachers to develop something in their own teaching, to take time out to focus on their own teaching. For example, if a biology teacher wanted to create an elective called, the biology of cancer, I'm going to create this elective called the biology of cancer that involves genetics, involves, cell biology, to pull that together. That would be something I would think would be really exactly what I wanted the sabbatical to be for. And I think that there's been a little bit of a shift to say, okay, you have to do something that makes a programmatic change in the district, which I think puts a lot of weight on a sabbatical, and it kind of takes it out of a little bit away from what I thought the original intent was going to be. So. And I think maybe it's limited the number of sabbatical proposals we've gotten because I think it's more appealing and maybe comprehensible to say I'm going to delve into reading science and see how something should be changed rather than say I'm going to create a PLC to change reading in this district. Can you see what I'm saying? So I think it may be a policy issue. I'm not going to be here to deal with it, but I think there's a kind of maybe a little bit of a drift. But maybe, you might, the argument can be made that you might get more effectiveness if you do have a programmatic So I don't think those should be eliminated, but it seems to me that those are given maybe a bias against just an individual teacher working on a project that would improve that person's teaching, because my sense is that improves the district, and that probably improves other people, your colleagues, but you're not necessarily claiming that you're going to improve something that goes way beyond your own classroom. So that's my little speech. So something that maybe a policy might want to look at. Is a policy clear on that? Is the intent clear on that?
All right, thank you. Other committee updates, Dan?
Yep, policy committee met last month, met with council, reviewed ongoing policy changes, meeting tomorrow. Obviously nothing ready for the school board to first read yet, but hopefully soon.
I think that's it. All right. Do we have any members of the public? I do not see any members of the public. So closing actions then, our February 21st meeting will start at 6:30. Make sure that Maeve also gets that information. And then our meeting on March 6th, I believe, will be the last meeting with this board, correct? Yep. So that will be how that goes. We have two non-publics, and so the first one is a personnel matter, and so that is, I believe, the RSA. I have to make. Yeah, excuse me?
You just want to make the motion?
Sure. I'll make the motion to go into non-public for RSA, under RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2C, a personnel matter. Can I have a second? Matt, and this requires a roll call vote. Tom?
Brian Cisneros, yes.
Dan Klein, yes.
Denise Day, yes.
Matt Bacon, yes.
Heather Smith, yes.
John Jelsey, yes.
All right, we are in non-public.